Hi everybody. Today we are going to do a review video for chapter 2 because you guys have a team test tomorrow. Chapter 2, in case you forgot, was all about angles and measurements. So a lot of triangle work, a lot of different line work. So these are the three sections we went through. Section 2.1, we talked all about the angles and the different vocabs and the relationships between those angles. A lot of those angles were parallel, or those lines were parallel, cut by a transversal, or they had a triangle in it. The next section we went through was 2.2, which is the one that we kind of mushed all together, and that was just finding the area of triangles, parallelograms, and trapezoids. And then in section 2.3, we discussed the Pythagorean theorem. So those were the three main ideas hit in that section. So you guys got your vocab sheet today. You guys should be good on your vocab sheet. So section 2.1.1 was all about complementary, supplementary, and vertical angles. Section 2.1.2 was angles formed by transversal. So definitely make sure you guys know all your vocab and you guys can discuss, or you guys can figure out all the angle measures based on the different definitions and the relationships that are going on. More angles formed by transversals. So 2.1.3 was basically just another review. Then there was 2.1.4, which was angles in a triangle, which is where we started to introduce the idea of the triangle angle sum theorem. And then applying those angle relationships, so kind of putting it all together and practicing that kind of stuff, was 2.1.5. Then all of the 2.2s here were just our areas. So there's definitely a question on your home or your team test, and it is a complex shape. So you have to break that shape down into different shapes that you know how to find the area of, and do it that way. And then we did 2.3.1, which was triangle inequality, so figuring out what sides of the triangle would work, what sides wouldn't. And then 2.3.2 was the Pythagorean theorem. So here is our joke for today. I'm getting into Halloween a little bit here. Which might make more sense to you once you actually learn what the definition of pie is. But just a little funny joke for you, pumpkin pie. All right, there is one thing that I want to talk about in regards to your team test. So I put a problem on your team test like this. We have practiced reflecting over a line before. You basically just take the distance and keep going. So for example, if my distance was like one diagonal, my distance here would be one diagonal. If it was one diagonal here, my distance would be another diagonal. See, you've got 1, 2, 3, so 1, 2, 3. So it's just basically the distance away from the line. So on your team test, I actually give you a problem where I say reflect the image over the line y equals x. Based on Algebra 1, we should all know how to graph the line y equals x. That's literally if y equals 1, x is equal to 1. If y equals 2, x is equal to 2, so on and so forth. So it's just a straight line through the origin. And then you plot your points, and what happens here is your x and y's just change. So if you don't like this idea of like, okay, one diagonal across and then one diagonal across, all you're doing is switching the points. So if it's negative 2, 0, it's going to be 0, negative 2. If it's negative 5, 1, it's going to be 1, negative 5. So I wanted to make sure I touched base with you guys on that one because we practiced this very briefly. We've definitely reflected enough, so I want to take it to the next step because there is definitely released questions from the state test about reflecting over the line y equals x. So that will definitely be on your team test. If you have any questions about that, please stop in and let me know because that is a big one. The next thing that I want to go over is just making sure that we really, really, really understand this idea of 2.3.1 because we talked about it the other day and we were kind of back and forth on it, but I just want to make sure that we're fully understanding this. So I just want to run through 102 really quick to make sure that we are good on that because this is going to be another one on your team test. So it's finding the minimum and maximum limits of the lengths. So even though in A it looks like that side DF is the longest, we want to know what all side lengths would work for that to be a triangle. So what we do for the minimum, you subtract the 2. So it's 19 minus 13, which gets us 6. And for the max, you add them. Which gets you 32. So when you go to write this, I would write this, so you could have a side length of 7, but you cannot have a side length of 6. So it has to be greater than 6, but it has to be less than 32. Okay, so when we say greater than or less than, we are not saying that they are equal to each other. Okay, we're not saying that they are equal to each other. It cannot be 6. It cannot be 32. So if you are sitting here thinking about this, it can be 7 to 31. Anything less, anything more will not work. So if you give it to me like this, that's okay. If you give it to me like this, that is also okay. So max, you're subtracting, or min, you're subtracting, max, you're adding. So for the next one, the min would equal 1, and the max would equal 29. So you would say it's got to be greater than 1 and less than 29. So it cannot be 1 and it cannot be 29. And then for this one, the min, even though we're not given numbers here, it's going to be b minus a minus b, whichever one's greater. Remember, you can't have a negative side. And then max is going to be equal to b plus a. So for this one, it'd be b minus a is less than ac, which is less than b plus a. Okay, so I really just wanted to clarify that because on Monday's lesson, it really talked about finding the max and min, but we were really talking about the longest side length. So some of you guys might have drew down it had to be longer than 19, but less than 32, which would be correct if it was the hypotenuse. But we were just talking about any kind of triangle here. So I really wanted to clarify that to make sure you guys knew what was going on for when you guys take your team test. So there is that example. Alrighty, the last thing I want to go over is really just to make sure that we're completely 100% understanding the Pythagorean theorem. So we've gone through a lot of different proofs. We've seen a lot of different stuff that was going on here. So what I want to do is I just want to, let me find a good one. Run through 111 here really quick just to make sure that you guys understand how to use this. I think a lot of you guys were trying to use it on Monday. We're really trying to use it on Tuesday, and then Wednesday you guys are taking your team test. So not a lot of time here to practice it and use it. But remember, the properties are it can only be used when you have a 90-degree angle, a right triangle, and your C is always your hypotenuse. So I'm just going to set these guys up. So I noticed that right here, X is my hypotenuse. It's the longest side. It's the one across from 90. So when I set this up, remember, it doesn't matter which one's A or B. You could put 5 squared plus 4 squared. You could put 4 squared plus 5 squared. So when we do this one, which you guys should have already done already, it's going to be 16 plus 25 equals 41. So what you want to do, equals x squared. These added together are going to give you 41 equals x squared. It's always the square root, so we are going to square root here and square root here. You a lot of times will not get a nice answer. So it's roughly 6.4. This one, same thing, but this time my hypotenuse, so what I would do every single problem is just circle your hypotenuse right off the bat, that way you know, is given to us. So we have 7 squared plus y squared equals 11 squared. So I am going to have 49 plus y squared is going to equal 11 squared. I am going to get y by itself by subtracting 49. So y squared is going to equal 72. And then the square root of 72 is going to be 8.5. Okay, so the reason we are always taking the square root is because if you go back up here, oops, sorry, let me exit out of this. If you go back up here, everything is based off of squares. Okay, so squares and square root directly relate to each other. If you guys still want extra practice or anything like that, please make sure you can go through and make sure all of your exit tickets are filled out. Even if you don't complete those, you are still responsible for those on like your team test, on your homework quizzes, on your individual tests, because a lot of those types of questions are going to pop up, and that's why I give them to you guys to practice. So make sure you guys are flipping through that, you guys are reviewing that. You guys are flipping through your vocab sheet, and you guys are practicing your vocab, making sure you know all of those things. If you want some extra practice, go to your closure section. There are some good practice problems in here. For example, C right here would be a great one to practice if you need extra help with going through those angle measures. Finding the area of shapes, 119 is really good if you want some more practice with that. Naming the following shapes. I do give you guys a problem with shapes. They're all triangles, but just making sure you know your different types of triangles. Still, your rotations, reflections, all of that's still going to be reviewed on your team test, so make sure you know that. 121 is a great one if you still need to practice those angle relationships. I actually ask you a question like these, and I tell you to give me the relationship between the angles. So for B, you'd say you would set those equal because they're vertical angles. They need to be the same, or they need to equal each other. For C, I'd say you'd add those together and you'd set it equal to 180 because they are supplementary angles. Systems of equations, there is a system of equations, so make sure you know how to do those types of problems. Don't worry about 124. So definitely just hit that closure really quick if you need extra practice or you're still confused with something. Also, always feel free to come talk to me if you guys need extra help before your team test. So other than that, that's all I got for today for our review video. And I will see you guys tomorrow for the team test. Have a great day.